So my name is Dr. Philip Alexander, and I run a podcast called The World Revolution. And the World Revolution is all about raising consciousness on the planet. I'm here with Jason Curtis, who's from Supremes of the Ohio
Valley.
Right. Yeah, thank you for joining us, bro.
Oh yeah, no doubt, man. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Well, I always start my podcast with one question, and that is, what is your life purpose?
My life purpose? Man, you started with the boom, bam, right out the door, huh? I like that question, though. My life purpose is almost similar to the description of your podcast and why you're here. My life purpose is, I feel I came here with a message, and I have to take that message and use the tools that I have, which my biggest tool is obviously the music, and to share that message to raise the awareness and the consciousness around me to better help the planet.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel like when I was a kid, I had this knowingness that there was something that I was here to do. And when I got
right,
that became clear when I started to notice things about life, and I was like, oh shit, this world that we don't know, and it seems to be, the answer always seems to be love.
Yeah. You know, there's a guy named I don't know if you ever heard of him. His name is Dan Winter, and he talks about he was like a electronic engineer of some sort, and when he came into like his awakening, he has this it was pretty old, but it was going off of what you were talking about. It's called negentropy, where he was talking about like how we can program our DNA through emotions, and that's all. Hold on, baby, I'm busy. Sorry. Go watch your TV. Excuse me. Yeah, go ahead, baby. I'm sorry. Sorry about that. But he talks about negentropy, which is like he's talking about programming your DNA through emotions, and he breaks it all down through our electromagnetic field and how it all works, and how that feeling of bliss can actually prolong life. You know what I mean? And actually reprogram your DNA of the being that you're in. So when you say the answer is always love, for some reason, you know what I mean? It is always love, no matter how you look at the situation. It always comes down to love being the factor. That's either what's missing or not enough of.
So I guess this leads into S.O.T.O.V.
You say, how did we come up with that?
Yeah.
Well, it was crazy because we were studying like the Nephilim and the Anunnaki and a whole bunch of stuff like that, right? And we had found that they had found like these giant bones and these giant burial mounds in the Ohio Valley, and so crazy, right? You know what I mean? So they have these huge burial mounds there. So like when we were studying about it, like a lot of the, what you want to say, quote unquote, professionals or people who study this on a daily basis, or for historians, they point back to it being like a war of some sort, you know what I mean, in the Ohio Valley. And they can't really it's still kind of funny because the way the mounds are built, they match the astrology in the sky, like they match the patterns of the stars in the sky and stuff. So when we were doing research on that, we were digging into that, right? And around that time, we were doing the music, and we were like, so what are we going to call it, what we're doing right now? You know what I mean? And we were studying about the Ohio Valley, and we're from Ohio, and the whole state's a valley. And then we did the origin of Ohio, and it's fact that it's shaped like a shield or a heart. And going back to just like the origins of the names of where we're from, the streets and everything. Like, man, there's almost like a city in China that's almost identical with the street names and stuff like that come over here in Ohio. So what we wanted to do is reach a level of supremacy where we were at a level where the knowledge was coming in so fast and so hard that we were absorbing it so fast and so hard that we reached a whole nother level of our, you know what I mean, of our consciousness. You know what I mean? So that's why we live in the Ohio Valley, and the Supremes of the Ohio Valley. So that's where it all came in. It was like all pointing at that. You know, at the time that we were started it, and what we were studying at that time, it all pointed to that name.
Wow. And where do you see you guys going? What's the vision?
The vision, I mean, like a lot of people, they want, you know, they want the big lights and all of that, you know, and the fame, and we're looking for just to spread a message, to let people know, the main message is that there's more, period, point blank, you know, because it's hard to say exactly how it's going to be for every individual. You know what I mean? So we try to hit on a broader perspective to where we can encompass everything. We try to embody it all. But where I feel we're going is a place where we can bring everybody with us. You know what I mean? We want to be accessible. We want to help. We want to build communities. You know what I mean? We want to build sovereign communities. We want to show people that they're more than this flesh that they see in the mirror. They're more than what they might see on TV or what their influences may be. So our message and our music, I want to put us in a place to where we can be completely accessible to everybody around us and be there and be able to help people not only sonically and through their vibration of the music, but also be there physically for people. So that's where we want to really take literally the music. We want to take it to a place where people can come to us, people can live with us, people can farm with us, people can, you know what I mean? Like connect with us literally on all levels.
Well, I love your music. Like I used to, when I was a kid, I used to listen to a lot of hip hop. But the stuff that you guys rap about, it just that's what people should be actually listening to. Not. I mean,
Right.
yeah, the other hip hop artists, they talk about their life journeys and all of that, but then it
Right.
doesn't really go to the highest place, you know. But you guys actually talk a lot of real stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the music seems like it's become another weapon for, you know, for really destruction of the mind. You know what I mean? Like when you listen to some music, you know, and all you hear is, you know, big booty bitches and drugs and fucking fast cars and shit that, you know what I mean, doesn't really matter. But then it's like it's every single song. It's not just, you know what I mean? Like it's not just a song where it's like, hey, rags to riches, hey, here I am. Just one song, you know what I mean? But it's just like millions of them, you know what I mean? And the message is the same. So you like as humans, we our brains are computers, and we get conditioned for this type of stuff. You know what I mean? And we just over and over repetitive in people's minds, and then people don't really realize the damage that it's doing to their psyche, to their spirit, to their energy. You know what I mean? To their aura, just continuously pounding that type of music and or that type of vibration, you know, in their eardrums, and then in the children's eardrums, and then you know what I mean. It becomes look look where we're at now with a lot of things. I mean, we can't say that we're doing the best, you know what I mean, that we should be, you know, especially for the youth, you know.
What is truth?
Ooh, that's a good one, man. What is truth? Truth is the very thing that we have to stand on. I would say is the foundation of almost everything. And to know truth is all perspective sometimes, you know what I mean? Because there's a thin line between right and wrong. There's a thin line between what you should do, what you shouldn't do, what you want to do, what you need to do. A very thin line, especially, you know, when you're speaking to two different people, because your perception isn't mine. You know, when you close your eyes, I don't see darkness. You know what I mean? So per se, so it's like, truth. Truth is, it changes, I guess, per person, but there is a universal truth out there, that connects everything together, um, and that truth is rooted in like you were talking about before, love. Well, I would say unconditional love. That is because you can't just everybody throws that L word around nowadays so loosely. Um, but so I would say unconditional love would be truth. No matter how harsh or how real or how happy or whatever the outcome might be from obtaining it, you know what I mean. And I feel like real truth is something no one can possess by themselves. It's something that we all encompass, you know what I mean, internally. We're born innately knowing not to hurt our mothers, you know what I mean, but for some reason, they make laws to say don't kill people, but we have to understand, like, the truth is we already know that that's something bad, you know what I mean? So truth gets so distorted and watered down and almost like, I don't know, almost like till it's not truth. But to me, there's in everything. You know what I mean? There's truth even in lies. You know what I mean? Like the lies that you might hear on television or propaganda and all of that. There's still some truth somewhere in there. You know what I mean? Like, it just all depends on if you're can discern it. So to that's a good question to just broaden it down. Or was that?
There's that track you got, There Lies Our Truth. Do you
Yeah.
right? That there's a lot of that's what you're talking about, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the message that we all kind of get conditioned into living, um, which is a
Yep.
truth in itself, but then there's a higher truth, I suppose.
Yep. Yeah, so like, and there's lies, like their lies. It was like a double entendre, It's like their lies are our truth, and then their lies are truth. The truth is that the lies that we're being told are truth, and we accept them as truth. You know what I mean? And really, it comes down to people accept what they allow. You know what I mean? Because in all reality, we control our own realities. You know what I mean? So if we allow something to be truth in our reality, then it will manifest as true in our consciousness and our reality. You know what I mean? But if we are able to, understand that there's more to that truth, there's two sides to it. We can always break those barriers. But yeah, there lies our truth was, basically breaking that down, because the truth is everywhere and nowhere at all at the same time. It's crazy. That's a good question, though.
Um, so, do you guys? What are your thoughts on conspiracy theories and things like the Illuminati and the history of mankind? Do you believe that there is a family or a group of individuals that may be vibrationally in control of the planet, and or something along those lines? Because the lyrics in your
Well, I mean,
indicate that there's some
yeah.
understanding of that or awareness of.
Absolutely. I think that you can't put anything past humans, as as we are, the beings of the flesh that we incarnate in. Like, you can't put really any too much past humans. So like, I think that with the evidence that I've obtained myself, and the evidence I've gathered from the evidence of the many other people that I've gathered, you don't want to say, put your finger on it and say, oh, these people are actually doing this and these people are controlling this and controlling that, because you dive a lot of deep into that occult, and then some people don't know how to get out of it. You know what I mean? But I believe that with the evidence that I've obtained, that there is, groups of individuals who get together per se and conspire on controlling things. I mean, look at the evidence. All of the media companies are owned by like 5 different families. You have all of the evidence that points to uh, there could have been fake moon landings, and there's, what I mean? Like, there's so much information out there, and there's documents on this information, and there's stuff that you can grab and read on the information as well. And that's another thing, that coincides, with the truth. But as far as like, they call it conspiracy theories because everybody normally believes the lie. You know what I mean? Everybody already believes the lie, so then it's a conspiracy if it's something else. You know what I mean? Like, if it's the truth. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So to me, it's like a lot of. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, the world that we live in, it's crazy, but that's normal. Like, it's and anything that
Yeah.
what is your understanding of consciousness?
I guess you would say, oh man, that's a good question, but I can break it down. My understanding of consciousness would be the place all of our souls go to connect, or let's say within each individual self. Consciousness would be our soul's internet. That way we can connect to each other. You know what I mean? I can connect with even plants and animals. So the consciousness, my understanding of consciousness is like kind of similar to how some people explain the ether. How there's the ether out there where it's energy and we're all connected to it. I believe that there's well, with my I keep saying belief, but really it's a knowledge because I've studied it and found and searched and read books and did the hard labor for it. But for example, like there's energy grid or per se around the earth, and like you're talking about conspiracy theorists, there are U.S. bases at the focal points of every one of these energy. They call them ley lines per se. You know what I mean? And the ley lines, they try to control ley lines. Well, the opposition would try to control ley lines to try to control the conscious field of the earth. You get control over the way the energy flows, and you can't really tell people what to think, but you can point them in the direction of where you want the energy to go. So that's my understanding of consciousness. That's our internet. That's if we were all aware of that, we are one conscious, which would actually make us God and creator of our complete realm around us. You know what I mean? Together as one, we would be a lot more powerful and get a lot more things done. Wouldn't be any hungry. We would be all on the same conscious stream. But with individuals using things like religion and politics and a whole bunch of other things, color, to control people's energies, they kind of have control over the ley lines and the way the energy flows, making kind of make us manifest things for them. You know what I mean? Like it's almost it's crazy because it's like when you have more than one person thinking about one thing, you know what I mean, you can manifest that. You can manifest it by yourself. Sometimes it takes a little longer, when it's just you. But if you have other humans that are in the same conscious field of you and in the same know as you, like you can manifest things a lot more, and you can bring it straight through the conscious field into the reality.
How did you come to this to these understand? Like, how did you find out about this stuff or get that knowledge?
It started when, well, as like you were saying similar. I mean, as a kid, you know what I mean, I always knew there was more. Church always had questions on the origins of things because they never really explained everything fully to me. When I asked questions, I normally got shooed away. You know what I mean? Um, so as I got older and older, and as I was more sovereign or becoming an adult and being able to read the books I want to read and find information that contradicts anything that I've ever been taught, I realized that at one point in time, like everything is basically a lie, or almost everything is a lie. And I came to that conclusion because doctors don't heal, teachers don't teach, you know what I mean? Like anything that is put out, policemen don't, protect. You know what I mean? Anything that's been put on this in this matrix, it doesn't work. It doesn't do what it's supposed to do inside. And so it came a time when I was wondering about the origin of the body. So I was, went through the Bible, went through the Quran, went through a couple other things, Tibetan Book of the Dead. I was reading a bunch of stuff. And I just wanted to know everybody's individual origin of, what they believe or what they come to think was knowledge, or not knowledge, or truth about their origins. And I followed it all the way back into the oldest the oldest textbooks, I guess you could say, you could find would be, I mean, well, they're written on jade and stone tablets, but you know what I mean. There were a couple of people who have depictions and translated these tablets, and it came down to there was a guy named Lloyd Pye who does a really good video about it. R.I.P. Lloyd Pye. He passed away a couple years ago, but it's called Everything You Know is a Lie, I think, or Everything You Know is Wrong. One of the two, and it's like a 2 hour long video, and he goes into how, oh man, the origin of Earth, and the evidence behind the origin of Earth, and the evidence behind humans, why we're the human for the flesh, not the soul per se. How the flesh got here, and then when you read the tablets, and then you read the translations of the tablets, and then you read about Kemet, ancient Kemet, and Horus, and all of those gods, you know what I mean? And then you read about this, and then you realize like all of those stories that they were talking about were just copycat stories from these ancient texts, and they just changed characters, they changed names, they changed it to fit their culture, they changed it to fit their politics, they changed it to fit their religions, you know what I mean? Like, and it just kept evolving and evolving and evolving through the whole well, I guess time period that we've been here, I guess. So when I came to the understanding that everything that I was initially taught was, or could have been possible, a lie or not a whole truth, that was when I started unfolding all of the understanding. So basically, I kind of just wiped anything that was taught. You know, Christopher Columbus found America, all of the stuff that was ever programmed into me. I basically deprogram myself and then relearn, and just had to relearn and try to relearn all of this stuff. You know what I mean? So that's how I got to this understanding. But first, I had to go, backwards to get rid of all of the nonsense that was, that was taught to me before.
There's a talk amongst the conscious collective that we're all going to another dimension or a fifth dimension.
Mm-hmm.
What do you understand of that? And is that, 'cause for me, I feel like in other lifetimes there are historical texts that describe
Mm-hmm.
an awakening that happens in humanity.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's something that's similar to what happened before. It's happening now. What do
Right.
you and is going on?
I can agree with that for sure. I mean, scientifically, I even looked up some things about that. I guess, where our Milky Way galaxy sits on the arm of the galaxy, how it's spinning and where we're going and how it's moving. They break it all down, and yeah, I mean, technically, by the scientific definition of it, we would be moving into maybe like a five-dimensional type transition into that, and it does make sense. Excuse me, with all of the crazy energies that's happening around the world. What's, you know what I mean, like how everybody's been affected by this, you know what I mean? And it's not just you or me, it's not just like us who can feel it, it's like anybody, you know what I mean? Some people who don't even realize how much it's affecting them, And yeah, I think there was a really big shift in the consciousness starting in 2012. I think the initial like boom was 2012. There was like a shot and just in like so many people who were just on something different, you know what I mean, wanted to be or wanted to understand more of what was already in front of them. And then as the years have gone by since 2012, I think there has been more and more people awakening or realizing that there's more, and like that's all you really have to come to the realization is that there's more than what they're telling me, you know what I mean? There's more than what has been taught to me. You know what I mean? There's more. I am more. We are more. Like, and once you realize that, then like the search for knowledge and understanding is going to be, we're going to go through lifetime after lifetime on this. You know what I mean? Like we have so much information to gather. So I mean, there's no need to be in a rush about it per se, because we kind of we were eternal souls. You know what I mean? So that that is another thing as well, that, you know, the death thing is what causes to me a lot of the disturbance in what's trying to be accomplished, and what could have already been taken care of naturally. You know what I mean?
You spoke about past lives, and do you remember any lifetimes where you've been on the planet before? Yeah, and whether you.
Yeah. I vaguely have some memories of riding horses in like out in we were definitely in Egypt somewhere, or in Africa somewhere. Um, I can't quite remember the time period, but I always have these reoccurring dreams um, of being back then, you know, riding horses with somebody. I don't know who it is, but they're close to me. They're obviously, you know, somebody that I know, you know what I mean, and trust and love and whatnot. Um, but like, and normally, like when I have like this reoccurring dream, like like, do you know, there's do you ever watch that I don't know if it was like a Disney or Pixar movie, the Prince of Egypt?
Yeah, that's with the
um
right. That's the
yeah, so like, yeah, like that sound, the instruments, the Egyptian instruments that and the African instruments that were used, you know, in that soundtrack, for some reason it always triggers these memories, you know what I mean? And I don't know, I've never rode a horse in my in my life. Now, you never rode a horse, you know what I mean? And you know a dream from vision, you know what I mean? Like, you understand, like in my dream, you know, when I know it's a dream, I can fly and do this and do that. You know, if I'm having a memory, you know what I mean, or I'm seeing a memory, or I'm inside of another time period, you know what I mean? You know, you can't do all of that because it already happened. You're just reliving it, you know. So I would have these reoccurring dreams. We were riding horses, and it was the landscape and everything was just beautiful. It could have been a whole other completely time period, but I remember that. And then there's then there's another one. Um, I'm not sure. Okay, this one's a lot more fuzzier, but I have a memory of these darker humans with red hair, red facial hair, red hair. Um, and kind of tall, like really tall. They were all over 6 foot. Um, and I don't know, see if that was either past, you know, life, or like I said, it's hard to determine if it's past or future. I know the one for sure riding horses was past life, because the attire that was worn, the type of structures that were built around me, and stuff like that. It was really definitely almost like, you know, what you would see in a movie or something like that. But even more grander and more beautiful than you could, you know, really put your finger on, you know, than what you could see modern day. You know what I mean? Like, it was just dope. It was just really dope. But yeah, the other one is just, and the other one I remember armor, like iron armor, like back in the medieval times. A lot of like they had red hair, facial hair. All the people around me, like a clan. I don't know if it was a clan or some sort, but I was in a clan. You know, obviously, you know what I mean. People addressed me, you know, stuff like that. But they wore armor. You know, had what's that stuff called? The mesh, the iron mesh on. You know what I mean? They had shields and emblems on their shields and stuff like that. And I never can really. Every time I try to do more than like I guess what I'm allowed to do in this vision, you know what I mean? Or what I'm granted to do or what I know to do, like I always end up waking up, you know, from it. You know what I mean? Like I'll be like, well, let's go see. I want to go see what's over here. So I'll try to walk in another direction. And I guess, you know, maybe it's because it's not on that timeline. You know, I'm trying to change the timeline. You know, so things switch up on me, and maybe it brings me back. You know, but I feel like, you know, time is very crazy construct. But I don't think it really exists at all. You know what I mean? I think everything's happening at the same time. But so like when you go with past lives, it's kind of like you're just remembering, I guess, another timeline. They would say. So, you know, so yeah, I've remembered several of them. They're really foggy. but it's more that I tap in and the higher my consciousness raise and the more awareness I get and the more balanced, I guess you could say I'm able to like hold those a little longer and get a little bit more information from them, and stuff like that. But it's been like I've been doing research on professional reincarnation lately. That's been the topic.
Is that like you can take control of the process of birthing yourself into a body like that?
Absolutely.
Wow,
Yep.
I heard a little.
I guess there's some master reincarnators out there. They have some books out, stuff like that. I was trying to get a hold of a few books, see what they were talking about.
Right. Yeah, that.
Like controlling that process, that's so awesome, though. I mean, you know what I mean, to be able to understand yourself to the point where you could control that process, like that. That means you're definitely in your whole power. Then you know what I mean. Can nothing really stop you after that?
Of death or the uncertainty of it. It's just like, oh yeah, like I'm just in this body and I can leave it and come to another.
Right.
This becomes normal. Yeah, the world would be different.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I guess I was reading about, just reading some things about what these books were about. And I guess, like once they say, when you're dying or whatever, you see that light, or whatever, and they talk about the light at the end of the tunnel. I guess if you don't go to the light, you go to the dark. You know what I mean? That's your way out. I read that. I read some people talk about how like Jesus or a loved one would come to them, you know what I mean, like during that time and tell them to go to the light, or even aliens or beings pretending to be aliens. Like there's literally entities, I guess, you know what I mean. Well, I won't say I guess. I've done a lot. There's too much information to say that there technically isn't. I haven't seen one with my physical eyes per se, but I guess there's literally entities who try to get you into soul contracts so you come back to Earth. So you're trapped for another lifetime, not knowing that there's more. You know what I mean? And to me, it just sounds like literally the Matrix. You know what I mean? Literally the movie The Matrix. People trying to using us basically as batteries. You know what I mean? And that's what it really comes down to. They say The Matrix was a documentary, and the more you watch it, and the more you get into what's going on. I mean, spiritually, you could say that's the same thing. You know what I mean? There's someone in control, or entities in control, or there's several entities fighting for control. But this is what they're using. They're using this. They're trapping us into these pentagrams, and arm, leg, arm, head, Allah. They're trapping us into these pentagrams, and you know what I mean. They're in erasing our memories and making us basically slaves. And people are like, oh, what do you mean? I'm like slaves. Think about it. Like, think about a 9-to-5 job. It's basically slavery. You know what I mean? Now think of that on a universal scale and on a soul spiritual scale. Like there's actually micromanagers and then CEOs and these guys that they just want you to keep reincarnating without your memories, and you break the cycle and you break the energy that they're receiving, and they're controlling the power that they actually have, which, because once it comes down to it, you know what I mean, it becomes all about power to in the end, to a lot of humans.
Well, yeah, that's interesting because I was recently looking up stuff about the Anunnaki and there's other you could say races or other beings from other places in the galaxy like Pleiadians and so
Mm-hmm.
it seems to
Grays.
yeah, so there seems to be something going on that most of us as human beings we're not aware of. But I mean, what do you, because you in your songs you speak about this a lot. Oh well, in
Mm-hmm.
Anunnaki brain. Uh, what
Mm-hmm.
what is your understanding of all of that? How mankind may have been birthed?
Um, I have to accept it as a scientist, as a spiritual scientist, and as scientist on musically and all that. You know what I mean? I'm a scientist, and whatever I do, it's a very big possibility. It's very much more of a possibility that our species was a spliced species between the hominoid of Earth, which would have been Bigfoot, and the Anunnaki or alien species, hominoid from another galaxy. You know, there's more evidence that supports that than it does that supports any creation or even evolution. You know what I mean? That we have. You know what I mean? Like it knocks it all out of the water. I mean, because you get to talking about these tablets, and okay, the first people to ever write were the Sumerians, the ancient Sumerians. They had the first text, the first math, astrology, all of that, right? So we do research on them, and where the hell did they come from? Nobody knows. They just popped up on the map, you know what I mean, all of a sudden. And they can read, write, arithmetic and astronomy, astrology, you know what I mean? They understand so much, you know what I mean? And then they get it from, and then they wrote on these tablets where they say they got it from. You know what I mean? And according to these tablets, I guess they got it from the Anunnaki. You know what I mean? So the Anunnaki was the ones who came down. And then so like I was looking to the origin, like that goes even further back than that, because the Anunnaki, they speak about the reptilian race as well. And like I was doing some huge research, just trying to keep going further back. But basically, the Anunnaki are they came through a portal, I believe. You know what I mean? Is what happened. You know, they came through a portal. They crashed into what was Tiamat. They called it Tiamat. Well, it was Earth. It was the water world called Tiamat. This was before Earth was where Earth is now. I guess this is how the story and the evidence that I've collected, as well as a couple other people like Lloyd Pye. This is what we've shared some similar, you know, information. And so their ship called Nibiru. Like you heard of Nibiru and Planet X, and how it has an oblong, you know, rotation around the Earth, around our sun. And Nibiru isn't really their planet. Nibiru is just, I guess, a colonizing ship. They have a home planet that's somewhere far away, but they came to Earth to mine it. And it was complete accident, really, because they came out of hyperdrive or a portal or something. They smashed into Tiamat. They tore half of Tiamat off, which became our asteroid belt. And the rest of Earth was knocked into where we are now. Now, that messed up some of their stuff on their ship as well, which fucked up the orbit of their ship. And that means it only comes around 1300, or excuse me, 13,500 years or something like that, 1,300 years or whatever. It only comes around then. And well, while they were here, every time it comes around, they were jumping back and forth. But they were mining the Earth for gold to try to use in their atmosphere, because they messed up their planet with nuclear war and combustion engines. And, you know, the stuff that we're doing right now, it's crazy because a lot of them talk about how we're going to start spraying, you know, it's so crazy. They said it was, you know, conspiracy theorists, you know what I mean? But they were saying they're going to spray metals in the sky. They're going to spray aluminum in the sky. They're going to put, you know, gold in the sky to try to help the ozone layer. Right. You know what I mean? To try to keep the global warming and the weather changes under control. Well, the same thing in the Anunnaki story, you know what I mean? It's the same thing. That's what happened to their home planet. And they were trying to find a way to get more gold. So they found a planet that they actually kind of accidentally made, you know what I mean, by knocking Earth into where it is now. And they would mine it. They would mine it for gold. And they would come back around and mine it for gold. And there were a batch of Anunnaki who got tired of mining gold, and they wanted to get permission to create a slave. So they went to the hierarchy, and they gave them permission to create a slave. And there's stories about these slaves that they created as well. There's, like, I guess the first one that they created was just women. They were just completely women and asexual, and they can reproduce and get pregnant on thought. Yeah, like they were
engineered human beings. Because what I've seen is that the Anunnaki took their genealogy and they kind of meshed it in with some of the primates that were here.
Yeah.
Is there?
Some say it would technically be the hominoid, the Bigfoot, and they say Bigfoot because if you know what I mean, like if it was man, you have to watch that. You have to watch it. Lloyd Pye is a genius, and his information, I fact checked all of this stuff. You know what I mean? Just to make sure he was, you know, being honest. But that, to me, it would be not like a chimp or anything like that they were splicing with. It would have been the actual being at the time that would be like the actual hominoid of Earth. Like Bigfoot would be the equivalent of us if we were naturally here. You know what I mean? Think about it. Bigfoot, we as humans, we can only live in certain niches of the earth. We can only live by water. You know, we can only live, you know, close to, you know, places that can be fertilized and that can grow. Hominoids such as Bigfoot can live on any plane of the planet and exist with just itself. You know what I mean? It doesn't need technology. It doesn't need any of that. So, and he goes into that because when Darwinism's evolution, there's missing gaps. There's missing gaps from, you know what I mean, the evolution. You know what I mean? And in that missing gap, you know what I mean, there's still not, you know, there's still not enough information and not enough proof to fulfill that. Of course, Adam and Eve didn't happen because that's didn't make any sense, you know what I mean, whatsoever. You know what I mean, to get everybody from just two people.
Right.
So you have to know that there's something wrong with that. So you get into what, you know, what he was saying as being a spliced species, and then the evidence kind of starts popping out to you. Like you're seeing a squirrel with Down syndrome. You know what I mean? Like you ever see you know, a pigeon with diabetes. You know what I mean? Like all of these diseases and traits that reoccur in our DNA are just mistakes that the Anunnaki made when they were splicing our DNA together. You know what I mean? Like and it makes perfect sense because it's just like, instead of throwing it away, they're just like, oh, we'll just push it through. You know what I mean? Instead of just throwing the whole thing away. So then that's why you have, you know, a lot of humans with DNA, you know, defects that are passed down genetically. You know what I mean? It makes perfect sense. Then at the same time, Rh negative blood didn't exist for till like 1,000 years ago or something like that. You know what I mean? Like there's definitely more proof that supports us a species being a spliced species, maybe with many other species, or you know what I mean. I think there's some of us who may be splicing of the Anunnaki. I think some of us might have been, you know, part gray. You know what I mean? Like I think there's some of us out there that, you know, Pleiadian. You know what I mean? Like I think that there was many beings who came down and either made it or did some things that they, you know, they shouldn't have did, and creating beings, you know what I mean, and making a slave type thing. But yeah, I do believe that there are more than one. That there's too much information. There's too many like downright descriptive analysis, like what their ships look like. You know what I mean? What they're here for. If our government actually has, you know, contracts with some of these species, eventually they'll probably just be walking around like you and me. You know what I mean? If we can make that, you know what I mean, make it such, you know what I mean, be on that conscious. There's some that you don't want walking around with you and me, you know what I mean, as well. Just how it is in the whole universe with the yin and the yang, you know, the light and the dark. But I think I know for sure that we're definitely not we don't originate here on Earth. We might have been created here on Earth, but we aren't actual origins of Earth. It would probably be more like Bigfoot would probably be the original main man.
So
on there.
who do you think would have created Earth, like before there was human beings?
Well, according to the information that I've gathered, and you know, me personally, I think, you know, before Earth was where it was at, you know, it was something else. It was already a planet called Tiamat, and it was a water world. I don't think it was necessarily created. I think it kind of just happened. You know what I mean? I think this whole third dimension that we are in right now, I think that we as souls, I think we did create this whole dimension for sure. I think that from the information that I've gathered, from the just knowing myself, we were definitely chose to create this third dimensional reality. I've read a couple books that break down. You've heard the Thoth, right? Yeah, and the Emerald tablets and stuff like that. So
What is it? Hermes of Trigemistus.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, Thoth talks about how there was a fourth dimension, and in this fourth dimension, we've experienced straight bliss. You know what I mean? As souls, you know what I mean. So in this dimension, we're straight blissful. And that's good and bad souls. You know what I mean? This is like the plane where it's just all existence. You know what I mean? And it was good, and it was a great existence. And I guess from there, that we chose as souls to experience a lower vibration as well as to experience a higher vibration. So as souls, some of us chose to be planets in this third dimension. Some of us chose to be animals. Some of us chose to be, suns, and other things, living things that are alive, because planets are alive. Um, that's why, so are stars. That's why I have life cycles and stuff like that too. So, and I believe there's souls that who chose to come down and incarnate into as humans, into the creatures of Earth as well. And then there's also souls who chose to vibrate higher on different spectrums. So you have for example, the violet spectrum. So you take entities like the Arcturians. You ever heard of them? Um, yeah, the Arcturians. They vibrate in the violet spectrum. So if something is vibrating in the violet spectrum, like we can't even see that with our third dimensional eyes. You know what I mean? They could be standing around us right now. You know what I mean? And we would have no idea that they're here because our eyes don't see in that spectrum. We don't vibrate in that light spectrum. But yeah, so some souls chose to vibrate higher and have become other entities. But one thing that's been key is that we're all still multidimensional. You know what I mean? So we can feel these things, you know what I mean? We can tap into these things. But coming into this, when we made this realm, I believe that there's other entities who just want to have control over it, and others who just want to live peacefully, inside of it. You know what I mean? So I think we created it to experience a lower vibration, to experience things as something other than what we were. I think the wiping of the memories was not part of our idea. I don't think that was. I think that's a construct of, the battle of, yin and yang that have to exist in this duality. You know what I mean? I think it's has to be there has to be light. Well, light isn't the opposite of dark. Or dark isn't the opposite of light. Darkness is just the absence of light. You know what I mean? So it's just light is just not being there. But when you have it all together in harmony, you have enough dark and enough light, and inside each light and dark, you have enough dark and enough light. Then yin yang symbol. Pretty much when we can operate like that, then we can operate in harmony. But I do believe that this matrix there was what you want to say, like a web of misinformation, a web of deceit, a web of control that has been placed over this particular realm. And as souls, and this being our creation, and this being something that we wanted to experience, you know what I mean, and need to experience to become who we want to be and who we need to be for everyone else. Um, this definitely is it's become, a battle now. You know what I mean? So we have to, what I'm saying, we have to continue to grow in a manner of our consciousness, because oh man, it's so deep. It's so deep where it all ends up at. But like you said, like normally you could just point it back to love, because if there was unconditional love, we really even wouldn't be having this conversation right now. You know what I mean? It would be more of we would all have that initial understanding.
Yeah, there have been prophets and sages of the past that have been here on the earth. where do you think they came from? Or, because they came into a human body. Uh,
Right.
why do you think they would have
Right.
come, and from where? They wouldn't have come from the Anunnaki.
Right. Well, yeah, I know, right? You know, the thing about it, this is one of the guys that I like to listen to named Seven Bomar. He says it a lot. It reminds me of is that we will never have the origins or know the origins to everything that's out there, but the possibilities are so endless to know that there's so many possibilities. You can open your mind to it. So when it comes to that, like I think there probably was a guy like Jesus walking around here, you know what I mean, doing the things that they talked about, you know what I mean, and doing what quote unquote what they would call miracles. Same thing with Buddha and all, man, there's so many, you know what I mean? You can go back and you can see. And some there's your ancient alien theorists would say they were aliens. You know what I mean? First off, they were aliens. They came from somewhere. You know what I mean? They weren't of Earth. You know what I mean? But technically, neither is any human. You know what I mean? If you want to break it down genetically, we have everything that's out there in the universe inside of us already. You know what I mean? So it's like we can't quite possibly be just from Earth. But um, I think that those guys, I think that some of them were Earthlings. Some, or we'll get you the definition of Earthling, I guess. They were Earthlings. I think some of them reached a higher consciousness level. You know what I mean? A higher understanding, and they were trying to teach people. And what happens when that happens? 9 times out of 10, you know what I mean. Somebody history's proven that they get taken out the game. You know what I mean? 9 times out of 10. So I think there was a guy like Jesus. I don't think his name was Jesus. The information and the evidence don't point back to his name being Jesus. Just with the alphabet and there not being a letter J and a lot of other things like the Egyptians keeping extensive hieroglyphic information. You know what I mean? And Jesus not being in there not one time. So I think his name was changed to something else. It could have been something else. You know what I mean? I think there was very much some truth into that. I think there could have been a couple of them that were aliens. I was actually reading. Can't remember this guy's name. I was reading this book, and he was talking about how Jews are from Mars, and he was talking about you probably heard that theory as well.
The Hebrews were their own. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, but then he makes a lot of sense because people are like, I ask a question to people. I'm like, well, where is a Jew from? They're like, well, that's like an Israeli, isn't it? They're like, well, I'm like, well, that's a Palestinian, or so like, where did Egypt? And that's a Jordanian. Like, so wait. So where's the country? Jewish? Like, where's Jewland at? You know what I mean? Like, where is Jewasia? Like, where is that at? You know what I'm saying? It's not out there. So he was going on about that point. Like, there is no, because they came from Mars. That's what he was saying in his stuff. And then there's a whole story about that and Atlantis and what happened with the Martian and the humans and Toth and all of his followers, and they talk about all that in those tablets as well. Excuse me. Um, but I definitely think that I think some were from the stars, some were incarnated because they were they don't need to be what I mean. Excuse me, they don't need to travel in a spaceship. They can they can incarnate spiritually. I believe there's a combination of both, and I think there's evidence that support both of those as well. I haven't really just gotten any evidence to disprove any of those. So yeah, aliens. I think some of them were from outer space or from the stars. Some were from Earth. Just raised to higher conscious.
Uh, yeah, there's, we you spoke about Jesus. There's a lot of, like, his story is very similar to stories of, like, Horus and Ra, and the message that they brought up. I believe that.
Dionysus. There's a bunch of them.
Yeah, yeah. So there must be like, perhaps there's like a group of beings that are here to protect humankind, or perhaps
Yeah,
change the trajectory of the planet through human beings. If the Anunnaki
yeah.
came here and did something, then maybe they could use energetically, be able to do something, yeah, incarnate,
Oh yeah.
shift the.
Oh yeah, because when you read about the Pleiadians, like that's like their number one. You know, you read about them. The first thing you read about is that they're here to not to help us or influence us in our choices, only to show us how to love and to spread more love. You know what I mean? They want to raise the love vibration, the heart chakra, which is the strongest. You know, people, you know, they say your brain, you know, you think with your brain, you know what I mean? But you really think with your gut and your heart, you know what I mean? Like that should be the first things that you think with, you know what I mean, before your brain. And the Pleiadians, that's something that they teach about, you know what I mean, as well. And then you have, you know, like you said, you have. See, I was reading about this. They're called man, what was it? Man, the Intergalactic Council. You ever read about them?
Right. I've heard
Yeah,
about it.
you heard of them? I guess it's supposed to be 5 to 7, you know, species. The Arcturians is one of them, and the Pleiadians, I guess, is one of them too. But the you know the Arcturians go on to talk about, you know, they are displeased with the Anunnaki, the Greys, the Reptilians, because they all are on Earth and are influencing our choices, you know, not letting us evolve naturally. You know what I mean? So you read about this Lyrian War, or this they call it the Lyrian War, or they call it the Milky Way War, or was it? I can't remember what it was, but it was actually, you know, like a galactic battle, you know what I mean, between the reptilian species. I read about how the reptilians and the Anunnaki have a marriage with a treaty, have a marriage treaty with each other. And and when it all boils down to it, it all comes back to them being species that don't have a soul matrix, and them being species that can't embody love, them being species of logic and only numbers and technicality and not understanding compassion and you know, unconditional love. So it comes right back down to that. It's literally like that's a battle. Like when you read specifics about a reptilian creature or even a gray, you read that they don't embody a soul matrix. You know what I mean? It's all clocks and whistles. You know what I mean? And bells per se. You know what I mean? AI, artificial intelligence, almost. You know, not saying that they're not beings that actually exist. You know what I mean? In the flesh and the touch and everything like that. But as far as spiritually, this is why even some of the Greys, you know, have permission to abduct humans. You know what I mean? I heard the Greys were created by another species, and they don't have reproductive organs, so they try to encompass, you know, so they abduct humans, and they have contracts with our government started back in Roswell, to be able to do that, so they can reproduce for their species and bring about more. And then you read about these star children with the big eyes and the crazy looking heads and them being and then having crazy telepathy powers and all this extra stuff, you know. But then you have something now that is, you know, part gray and part human, and it has the soul matrix, and you have a soul embodied into that being. You know what I mean? Like, so now you have a complete, like, it's so crazy how they you know, it's just like how it's all just, you know, something that they try to cover up and something that is just so not real and everything like that. But when you actually go find the information, it's too detailed not to be something that our government even knows about, and you know what I mean, and tries to hide from us. But yeah, they're definitely all there. They're definitely there. They definitely visit. I have no doubt in my mind about that. There's too much evidence for it.
Uh, well, I'm gonna ask you a round of questions. We're gonna have to finish
Okay.
up soon. But these
Okay.
random
Cool.
questions, yeah, just like straight shoot. What scares you?
Okay. Um, What's say hi?
Hello.
Hi.
That's my daughter Leah.
Hi.
What scares me? Not having this little universe. That scares me the most. Not making the future that I need for my younger universes. Well, babe, you have to go now. Okay, it's bedtime. Thank you, though. I appreciate you wanting to hang out and kick it. Good night. Love you. But that's my biggest fear. That's anything that scares me would probably be seeing my kids or because they're just not, like basically small reincarnates of myself. You know what I mean? But just seeing them fall completely into this trap. You know what I mean? Like that's something that I fear. That's why I push the music that I push. You know what I mean? And the message that I push, so that my kids can grow up always seeing that and knowing that and understanding that. You know what I mean? And they can want to aspire to want to understand themselves more. But that's what scares me. Them not understanding themselves more would freak me out, man. I don't know what I would do.
What is true happiness?
True happiness. True happiness would be complete understanding of self.
I like that.
Simple as that. You know what I mean? Because if you completely understand yourself, then you can completely understand everybody else around you. And then there's no need, there's no room for unhappiness in that type of situation.
Who is your biggest spiritual inspiration?
My homie Brandon Benjamin, my brother, one of my brothers who be rapping with me. He's on that first verse of Godlit. You know, he comes in with that. I went to the origins of this,
Yeah,
connecting my origins to planets.
it was sick. Yeah.
I've
So,
seen him. Sorry about that. I've seen him go through so much, and he still can manifest anything that he wants. You know what I mean? Like this guy is amazing to me. You know what I mean? He goes through so much. The universe in the realm that he's in, it battles him so much because he's so powerful with what he can do. You know what I mean? And he understands it. So he's been my biggest inspiration because no matter what, he's always, you know what I'm saying, what he's been able to learn and grow with me it's always been stuck in my head for sure, and I won't ever forget it.
what? Who is your biggest musical inspiration?
My biggest musical inspiration right now, I would say that would be um man, that's a tough one because I don't really listen to mainstream music too much. My biggest music inspiration musically, I would have to say there are a couple of young guys out there that I would go with. I would go with my boy One Way. I'm inspired by One Way. He's out of Atlanta. Shout out to One Way. I would go with my homie. I have a friend named Logos. He goes by Logos. He's out of Sweden. He's definitely been a big inspiration and a big motivator for sure. Him in a flow state group, and then just my people's back here really it would be my biggest, motivators, inspiration musically wise. The whole 330, the whole Northern Ohio music scene has been something that I definitely support and be behind because I feel this. I share the same dream with these dudes.
What three books have influenced you most and why?
What three books? What?
Influenced you most?
Okay. Exit the Matrix by Seven Bomar. Um, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and there was a book. I can't remember who was written it by, but I got it at the 2017 Conscious Life Exposition out in LA. It was called "Shit the Moon Says." I can't remember who the author was. I let somebody borrow it, and I haven't gotten it back yet. But those three books would be the biggest inspiration. One, Exit the Matrix, because it's definitely, it was one of the first books I read. The Tibetan Book of the Dead, just because it stretched everything far, stretched it all farther for me. Just learning a whole nother culture and how they believe, you know what I mean? Just stretched the whole ideas of everything, and information and more gathering took place from that. And then Shit the Moon Says, well, I read on the plane, me and my wife read it, and I read it on the plane on the way back from California. And it was about, oh man, a young man's journey through the same thing that we're going through. But it makes it's just awesome read. This is an awesome read. It's very motivational at the same time. The way he speaks in the book is almost like linguistic programming. It's almost like, not in a bad way though. It's not like subliminal messaging like a commercial. It's more like, linguistic programming, like you get it. You know what I mean? Like, it's, how somebody can spill a whole bunch of information to you, and you know what I mean? Like, you won't quite get it. Like a teacher will tell you all of this stuff and write it on the board, and you're like, I still don't get it. But when somebody can say it to you the way you needed to hear it, that's how that book is written. It's written very much for anybody, and anybody who's looking to grasp this whole conscious realm, that people are starting to dive into. Shit the Moon Says.
Thank you for sharing that. I'll check it out.
For sure.
What is one superpower you would like to have if you had a choice?
Oh yeah. Time control. Yes, sir. Yep. I mean, then I can, if I had time control, I could figure out all the secrets to the universe. Then, you know what I mean? Like, I could figure it out. Oh, I'm gonna do this. Well, I guess you would not necessarily say time control. I guess you would say the understanding of actual how time works. You know what I mean? To be able to use it properly. I mean, because it's just a construct that we created. So if I had control over it, oh yeah, that would be phenomenal. I'll make sure I go back in time. I will learn everything and see everything. I'll come back and tell everybody everything. You know what I mean? The truth, and I'll be able to broadcast it. That would be awesome.
Well, yeah, Jason, thanks so much for doing this podcast with me.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, and I love your music. I'll do my best to promote it wherever I go.
Thank you.
Would you mind freestyling for us to close off the podcast?
Oh yeah, for sure. No doubt. Okay, I got you. I thank you very much for having me on the show. Now I'm about to kick back and blow on some doge. Me and the wife about to chill, call it a day. Just had to spill some knowledge for my people this way. See, I love you all eternally from the bottom of my heart, so I hope that you take what I got apart, put it back together, and make it all connect. Because all I'm trying to do is reflect like a mirror.
Awesome. Yeah, your music's awesome, man, and I look forward to hearing more of it. What you got coming up? Because yeah, I've not heard anything like it, and no, I feel like one day people will know who you are and what your message is. I really do.
Thank you. Thank you for sure. And what you're doing as well is inspiration as well. You know what I mean? I appreciate you having me on and talking with me, and just getting a little bit understanding and reflecting with me on everything that's going on in the world and in our conscious society and realm. And I appreciate just being able to be there. You know what I mean? I thank you for having me on the show. I'll do it again whenever, anytime. If I'm ever out and about or wherever you are, I'll make sure I contact you. You know what I mean? And we can definitely do something like this again. When I get the brothers together, maybe when we do our next release for our next project or something, I'll get the brothers together and we'll do this again. And that way you can get their take on it too. You can kind of get it all, you know?
Yeah. Lots of love to you, bro. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you more. Appreciate you.
Yeah. to the origins of this. Connected my organs to planets. Open my forces with forces from planets. Flow with the orbit to balance my zoomorphic canvas. I feel like a genius right now. I feel like I'm genius right now. It's bigger than Jesus right now. Fucking photons from the excess light to my third eye got me crystallized.